Awesome. Well, I'm here with my good man, Jeff Robbins. We're here in his beautiful backyard in Evergreen, Colorado. And I've asked him to be here with us today just because I met him through the Mankind Project, which is some men's work that I did a couple months ago.
Yep.
An amazing retreat that I highly recommend if you are a gentleman or watching and you've never looked into it. Highly recommend it. That's a shameless plug. But we were chatting just over coffee, walking around a beautiful lake here a couple weeks ago, and just learning more about his story is just phenomenal and inspiring and gut-wrenching too a little bit. And,
Yeah.
I just welcomed him to join us for this little video here, so thank you for being here.
It's my honor.
Yeah.
It really is, Johnny.
So he's been a very successful businessman. You started your own pharmacy.
Yep.
Pharmacies.
Pharmacy. Yeah.
Pharmacy,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we also had a corporate wellness business.
Okay.
So, and then I've been a consultant for years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he consults, he speaks, he teaches. You lead men's retreats or
Yeah.
Mankind projects. So you're doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
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 It seems like you're like. Have you ever seen The Prophet?
Yes.
The Prophet.
Yes.
Where he comes in and turns.
Yes.
It almost sounds like you do that for other type of functional medicine businesses.
Yeah, I do it for functional medicine businesses, and then I also kind of do it for people.
Okay.
Health wise,
Right.
we turn their lives around
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
And we find out what they want to do, how they want to live, how they want to experience life,
Yeah.
and then we help them try and meet that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So he's a very eclectic individual with a lot of background and experience. So I'd love to kind of maybe start you off just in letting people who don't know you as well,
Yeah.
obviously know just about your story, your upbringing, how you got to where we are today.
Sure.
In
Yeah.
more of the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
meaningful version, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Grew up, was born in Illinois. My formative years were spent in Brussels. My dad worked for Caterpillar Tractor Company, so we call ourselves cat brats,
Yeah.
right? Because we're kind of like army brats, right? And so my formative years, from 2 to almost 8, were in Brussels, Belgium, and that was quite an experience. I grew up learning French and English at the same time. My sisters went to the American school, but I was too young, and so I went to a Belgian kindergarten.
Cool.
So I spent all day talking in French,
Cool.
and things
Which
like
you
that.
still know?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
right,
enough.
yeah. My accent's good,
Right.
so
That's awesome.
it's natural.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and and there, I have I think a number of watershed events in my life, and that's where life started for me, and the tough side was. I was sexually abused when I was there, not family members, but by a neighbor. And it was about as horrible as you could imagine as far as sexual abuse goes. And so, what happened to me in that process, I was 3, I was a toddler.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't understand what was happening. The only thing I understood is he told me in French that if I told anybody that he would kill me and he would kill my parents and he would kill my sisters. And so that started me down this life of secrets.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, and also internalizing everything that happened to me.
Right.
And so that was, that was formative to say the least. And, so we moved back here when I was 8, and it was weird because when we moved there, I felt like I was a fish out of water because I was an American kid in Belgium, and then I became socialized to being a Belgian.
Yeah.
And then we came back, and now I felt like I was a Belgian kid in America. This was in the 60s, so, nobody was paying attention to any of that, right?
Yeah.
We didn't think about psychologists.
Yeah.
I had to go to speech therapy because I sounded like Pepe Le Pew, and so, but I always felt other than, and I was living this life of secrets, and so it was tough. It was pretty tough for me. So for me, my belief system, either by the grace of God or, my own brain taking over, the memories of the abuse were really suppressed, but the effects, the wake, like out of the back of the boat, were alive and well in me. So what I lived with day in and day out was terror. I was terrified about everything. What I learned later on in life, a buddy of mine that's a psychologist was like, oh, you don't know what fear is. I would just go from normal to terror just because my really first experience was terror.
For sure.
And so that got hardwired into me. So I didn't know you could just kind of be scared about something.
Yeah.
Everything just terrified me.
Right.
And
debilitating.
Yeah. So what I did to help moderate that is I self-medicated. I was a hardened drug addict by the time I was 12. I would do anything I could get my hands on, and do anything to get money to get my hands on drugs. And I mean, like anything from smoking pot, but also, I mean, I would huff glue and huff acetone. I mean, anything. I mean, and I think about it now, and I see a 12-year-old kid, and they're just, teeny tiny.
So young. Yeah.
And I thought, I was a drug addict then. It's just, it's a marvel.
Yeah.
It's a marvel that, now at my age, that I know that I was saving my own life. But that I'm not dead too.
Right.
I mean, a lot of my friends are gone.
Right. Right.
They were in jail, or they're gone. They're dead.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All running kind of in the same crew, huh?
Yeah. All of us, broken toys running together. Trying to fix ourselves, patch ourselves with the duct tape of, pot and ludes and acid and whatever.
Right.
But again, being now the 70s, kids didn't go see a psychologist back then. I mean, that just wasn't done.
Right.
And so that's where life left me until the point, and I think I told you about this, until the point, I was just so tired of being terrified. I slept with the lights on until I was 18, I told you, and my parents gave me a nightlight. That was the closest thing to therapy that I got, right? And I would because they knew something was wrong, right? But I would huddle, literally, I would curl around that nightlight, and that's when I was 15. Now I look at, I have 2 daughters, and I, look at them at 15, and they're these like super confident, and so the flip is on as opposed to being, now it's like, you should be like a young adult now. And I was still acting like a 3-year-old, right? When I was abused, which makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
So without any thought, I mean, literally without any thought, I grabbed some neckties from my dad's closet, and I fastened a noose, and I knew if I tied into the light fixture that it wouldn't hold my weight, because I'd done construction with my dad and stuff, and so I tied into the electrical box inside the ceiling of my room, and I stood up on my desk, and honest God, Johnny, I had no thought about this. All I wanted was the terror to end. Right? It was tough. And I had a foot off the edge of the desk, and my mom knocked on the door and said, "Dinner," and it just hadn't hit me that my mom would find my body. My parents weren't the problem, right? My parents are loving, people. But I thought, and I love my mom, and I was like, oh my God, I put my foot down. I was like, I can't let her find my body. There's no way.
Yeah.
And so I untied the noose and stepped down and was just kind of numb. And
the realization of what you were just about to do.
Yeah.
Started sinking a little bit.
It did. It really did. I remember saying to myself, I got to figure this out.
Yeah. And you were 15.
I was 14.
14. Wow.
So, it was amazing. it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So and then the next week, I'd been really interested in martial arts because I think of the safety thing, and also some structure, because I felt internalized, like I didn't have everything was just, garbled up inside. And then next week, I saw in the little local newspaper that this Korean master had just moved to town, and he was a half a mile from my house. And I rode my bike down there and met him, and my dad was like, "I'm not going to pay for that stuff." He was very conservative, financially. So, I started a house painting business, and I started to support, going there, and mowing yards and doing everything I could. Right?
Yeah.
But that was like the next watershed thing for me, because it gave me a place to go that I knew was safe.
Yep.
It gave me a structure, but it also gave me a place for all this internalized anger that I had, right? That I didn't even know I had. And if you think about it, I was saving myself and killing myself at the same time. And so this gave me a place where I could just hit stuff, and so that's what I did for the next 25 years was I hit stuff.
But I feel like you hit upon something, no pun intended, that's so important, which is like before I started, I have had an experience nothing even remotely close to what you've experienced, and yet I still was wounded, and still acting, but I didn't even know the result of stuff from my past and how it was showing up as an adult. And I think it's so easy to look out and see someone like, oh, they're screwed up, or they got some baggage.
Right.
It's very easy to see that. Yeah. But then when it comes to ourselves, it's so hard to identify, because we identify with ourselves, and it's been consistent.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that to a large extent there's this walling off that has to happen, because life is hard. It doesn't matter what age you're at. Your expectations are not going to be met on a daily basis. And I think as I'll just speak about boys, but little boys, we would just get mowed over if we felt everything that was happening to us. Right. So our psyche is amazing in the ability to wall off, and like you said, you can peer through eyes and go, "Man, that guy screwed up," But it ain't me. My life's fine.
I'm good.
I'm good. I'm on my 5th girlfriend, and they all say that I'm emotionally shut down, but it's their problem, or I'm a drug addict, or whatever. Take your pick. Pick your poison. Right?
Yes. Yeah. As I say, FINE is the acronym for feelings internalized, never expressed.
Right. Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. Sure you are.
Yeah.
But we don't even know. Like, even if we see that in our friends, or even I can't even imagine your parents knowing something's up.
Yeah.
And parents could be watching this and be like, something's wrong with my kids.
Yeah.
But I don't even know where it comes from. I don't even know what to do. It's a different time than in the 60s, granted. But, I'm sure your parents were just kind of, just to give you a nightlight, it's like, will this help? They didn't know what else to do.
They didn't know what else to do. And quite honestly, my mom, I didn't hide stuff from my mom. So my mom really saved me. So she knew that I was using drugs, and she knew that I was way too young. And so, it came out as loving scolding, but always an open conversation too. And so for parents out there, what saved me was my mom. I remember one time my mom said, you're just avoiding something that's inside of you. And that's all you're doing. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm fine. I'm a 12-year-old drug addict.
Everything's good.
Everything's good. But what I remember is that there was a voice inside of me that said, she's right. It was like that was my internal nightlight. Right? She gave me
true essence.
She gave me an internal nightlight that I could huddle around going, what I'm doing is screwed up. And I think that's what led me ultimately to go, I don't know how to fix this. I'm overwhelmed, so I'm going to end it all.
Yeah.
And again, for any parents out there, it was not some big plan. Like I had planned this out for weeks, or like I was going to kill myself. It was literally, I made the decision 2 minutes before I went and got the materials to make the news.
Yeah.
Had never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
And again, but by the grace of God and that knock on my door, I wouldn't be here. And so it doesn't have to be some big, long, hairy, visible, psychological problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was all inside of me.
Right.
Right. And it was, that was the John Wayne days. You kept it inside.
Right.
Right. Which still is alive and well.
No doubt. No doubt.
So,
in a massive way.
Yeah.
And so you started getting into mixed martial arts.
Yeah. Taekwondo.
Taekwondo.
Yeah. Taekwondo. And practiced my butt off, and I found the way. I found a way. It was like there was something I could attach myself to, and this is something that we'll talk about again later on, in I'm sure in this. But I could attach myself to something that was bigger than me, that had history, that I could feel safe in, and be a part of, and in service to. And so, immediately I started helping out. We put on demonstrations at schools because, he just started his business. And then when I became a black belt, I taught classes and taught seminars, and I got pretty darn good. I was the USTA national champion 4 times, and people were like, "Oh, you're great," and I was like, "You don't understand. I just like to hit shit." I mean, hitting shit is saving my life. And if it happens to be a person, it's all legal.
Right.
And I can knock people out. And so yes, I was good, and my work ethic came out, and that, when I was doing, when I was competing at that level, at a national level, that, I was working out 8 hours a day, but again, it was saving my life.
For sure.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But now I know that.
Was your Taekwondo, what do you call him, master?
Yeah, master, yeah.
Was he much of a influential mentor in your life at all? Or did he just provide the structure and the accountability?
He was, in a way. He was a man of very few words, and so it was really about watching him walk in the dough, in the way, and literally how he moved and how he held his body, and and he would give us a talk at the end of most classes, and it was really about being in integrity and being authentic and being of service, right, and paying attention to yourself and your family, and so he was like truly like a god to me. I just, anything he said, I internalized. And that was really important because my dad was similar. He was a man of very few words. And so, I had to glean from them what I could, and then internalize it and make up my own story. And the cool thing is now, instead of hanging out with drug addicts, I was hanging out with world-class athletes. And so I was able to internalize those messages more and more.
Well, it's interesting too to see, I'm often thinking about how we as men and these generations that we're experiencing right now, how are we redefining masculinity? And being men of more words than few.
Yes.
And how do we become emotionally intelligent so that we can speak about our feelings and then be able to pass forward, to future generations, and boys and girls alike, to how to better communicate? Because I feel like that's such the bottleneck or the choking point of anyone's life experiences. Can I speak about freely what's going on in my life and not feel judged, and then how do I actually move forward through that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. I was just having a conversation a few nights ago. Some family friends came up, and I was talking to these younger guys, and they're like 30 years old, in their 20s and 30s, and I was like, so what kind of trouble did you guys get into when you're kids, and he's like, well, one day he looks around, he's like, we soaped our neighbor's car window. And I was thinking, wow, I was huffing glue, and I was like, we have a totally different experience, and they were very communicative, up until a point. They were very, my judgment was, and this is just my judgment, great guys. I mean, seriously wonderful guys. And there was only an amount of emotional intelligence and depth, because I think they'd spent a lot of their life, gaming and, doing a lot of this stuff. And there wasn't, they were taught, their parents talked to them, so they had that ability to converse and feel comfortable. And they're, what I see, the bane for most of us in our society is that we're just not taught that emotional intelligence and how to access it, but also how to sense it. It's not just about me, it's how am I with you, whoever the you is, and how can I hear your truth, and and that's I believe that's the magic of life, is that I get to hear you, and hear you and I, we're I'm just going to make up some stories, but we're white guys, privileged in essence a white man's world, and so how can I hear women and people of color and LGBTQ folks, and hear them at their core, and not feel threatened by their difference, but honor and celebrate our differences, And that's my job for the rest of my life. That's what I want to do for the next however many years I got.
Which is a beautiful mission coming out of the ashes of some serious childhood trauma.
Well, because I know what it's like to be different. I was different when I went to Brussels. I was different when I came back to United States. I was different because I was a drug addict. I know what it feels like to be broken, and at your core, and I know that there are a lot of people that are different than me, that that are not middle-aged, owner class, white, cisgendered, heterosexual guys. That society, in essence, has told them that they're not worth, or that they're broken, and I can't make my last breath, the thought that I didn't do anything about that.
Right.
So,
amen.
Amen.
And so, while you were picking back up with your story, while you were training and you were becoming at least the U.S.,
US.
best in the U.S.,
and
starting to go more international and that sort of thing, you were still using drugs. You were still, or at what point did that you finally...
So I was a super high functioning addict, but by then, all the hard drugs had pretty much gone away, pretty much. I was smoking some pot and doing a little bit of speed and stuff. I would still do some cocaine. I know it sounds like I'm saying that's not much, but compared to what it was, it wasn't. And it was definitely moderated. I was going to college, start and doing well in college, had, relationships, had a girlfriend. And so, I was functioning at a high level, but I was still, attached to suppressing, and I still didn't know. I didn't know why I had to do that, but I still had to do it. And then I found the Mankind Project. My wife and I we met in college the first day of school, love at first sight, at least for me. And we waited till we got done with college. We got married. We went on this big, long honeymoon, came back, and I was like, hey, I want to mix stuff up a little bit. I know that, and ultimately I know that there's something that's driving me that isn't healthy still. And a buddy of mine said, hey, my brother just did this thing. He said it was the greatest thing he ever did in his life. And this was before the internet. So I just showed up, I was like, great, I'll do it. I'll try it, And after that process, the unveiling of my sexual abuse started to come through.
Yeah.
And because over and over again, I had these guys that are like, you know, have you ever been sexually abused? And I was like, well, I know something happened, but I don't know what happened, you know, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And because I was exhibiting all the signs of an abuse victim.
Which would be what for anyone that's not?
So I was constantly frightened. I was, in essence, numbing out as often as possibly I could. I was overachieving, right? You know, this grandiosity. I couldn't just be a taekwondo guy. I had to be the best, you know. And I did that at everything that I did to you know, kind of overshadow and overpower this brokenness that was inside of me. You know, just some of the ways I would speak. I would speak as a victim, talking about how life was against me, and you know, all this stuff. So and so they were like, hey, you know, and I was like, and then the more safer I felt with my group of guys. You know, after the weekend, we formed these groups, and the more it came out. And not very short time after I started going to my group, it's called an integration group or iGroup. I remember I had a one hitter thing box, and I took it and I you know, I walked into my group and I said, you know what, you are my addiction. You know, truth, integrity, honesty, emotional awareness. This is my new addiction. And I handed it over, and that was the last day. You know, I've been sober, you know, ever since. And I no longer consider myself an addict. I don't refer to myself as an addict. I have addictive tendencies. I know that about myself. And I just watch that stuff. You know?
But you no longer you no longer label yourself as recovering.
Or no, it didn't work for me. And
what didn't work for you?
Naming myself that. I get it that it works for a lot of people, and it keeps that you know, what we call a shadow, that shadow in front of them. But I had no problem keeping that in front of me because I was in my group all the time. I was going every week to my group, and so I knew who I was, and I was expressing my internal struggles, and so my thought was you know, I own, you know, from this work, we create a mission statement, we create a shadow mission statement, and my shadow mission statement really encompasses my addict, and so I say that every day, you know, and so.
Do you mind sharing it with?
No, so my mission is by speaking my truth and listening with faith, I create safety as a harbor for healing, passion, and growth. And my shadow mission is by staying small and turning away, I allow souls to twist in the wind, unheard and unloved. And for me, if I'm using, I'm staying small and I'm turning away. And the souls that are twisting in the wind, you know, and when I say that, I still see, you know, pictures of, you know, horrible pictures of people, you know, their bodies hanging, you know, from poles twisting in the wind, and one of those souls is mine. You know, when I act that way, I'm first up there. You know, and then you know how life goes is, you know, then it's the people closest to me first, my wife, my children. So
love that. Thank you for sharing that. And so, you know, something we talked about in the past and that I've done in some of my other men's meetings more recently has been focusing on the masks that men wear to cover up. And we're talking about it already. We're just not talking about using the word mask, but Taekwondo was exactly what you needed.
Yes.
And yet did also serve as a way to kind of cover up, you know,
absolutely,
what was going on, you know,
and
let it be also a vessel to release energy. But what other masks did you wear until you started becoming more emotionally intelligent to take them off? And then once you take them off, here's another question for you. Once you take them off, how do you... That can be scary and vulnerable.
Absolutely.
You're actually showing to the world for the first time in your life who you really are. If you even know what that is. You know, so there's a lot of questions in there, but maybe we can talk about that process that you went through.
Yeah, and you know, so I'll talk about, you know, in the men's work that I've done, we use the 4 quarters, Jungian archetypes: king, lover, warrior, magician, right? And to each of those quarters, there's you know, a positive or a gold side, and a negative or shadow side, right? And so those masks are what I started, you know, are the typically the more negative side. So what started out was this wounded lover, right? This little boy that was profoundly wounded, you know, in a sexual way, which, you know, can be, you know, can make the jump to loving, right? And so that wounded lover, that mask that I had to put on immediately was to, you know, was an addict, you know, and you know, and like you said, and I said, it's saved my life, and it doesn't work, right? So at the time, absolutely was necessary, and then I'm just going to move around the quarters. So so that's lover. Then the warrior, you know, the mask I took on, you know, here I was this little guy, you know, and I was badass, you know, I you know, I could kick just about, you know, I fought at 120.8 pounds, right? Same height as I am now. So that was 40 pounds ago. But I was small and fast. And back in the old days when you know, we would fight, we had 2 weight classes back in the old days, heavyweight and lightweight. And I would win the lightweight class, and then there was a heavyweight, and then we would have the grand championship, and I would always fight the heavyweight. So I would always fight these bruiser guys that were 180 to 280 pounds, right? And I never lost one of those. So I was a badass, and so what I became was a destroyer, right? And that was the mask I needed. Now it was tempered with humility through the martial arts, but I was still, you know, the mask I needed at the time was that nobody's gonna ever effing touch me again, and so that's that shadow mask, and then so lover, warrior, magician. The magician side is, you know, how we internalize things, how we think about things. You know, it's our problem solver. It's also our coyote, right? It's like our manipulator. And so I, as a kid, had to be able to walk into a room and size everybody up just by body language, and tell if I was safe or not. And that's a wonderful skill, but it also allows me to manipulate anybody that I want.
Right.
Because I'm 3 steps ahead of you and I'm 8. And so I could get whatever I wanted, you know, in life, because I knew what made you tick. You know, you're feeling you're fine, and I see every chink in your armor, and I know exactly where to stick that knife to either take you down or get what I want. And that was, you know, that was big. You know, it saved my life because it created safety. And the king I really didn't even go into, because that's this blessing thing, you know, as a young man. And then, so now the flip is becoming more emotionally intelligent and aware of my shadows in the lover, is that I have, you know, my love drives my life. I've become so aware of my heart and, you know, the endless, bottomless love that's in there. It just never stops pouring out. And I think that comes from that compassion that I talked about, because I know what it's like to be broken. And I'm just one of 7.5 billion broken souls walking on the face of this earth, right? So it's not like I walk around feeling sorry for everybody, but I'm willing to listen to you, and I'm willing to hear you for you, and not run it through my own filter, or as little as I possibly can, because my lover's safe now. And he's safe because I have this warrior, right, that is willing to stand up and do what it takes and be fierce when it, you know, I'm this lover guy, but I will light you up if you're my bro, right? If you're my buddy, I will tell you my truth. And I will not expect you to take it on,
Yeah.
but I'm going to take the risk because I'm courageous in my warrior. That I'm going to tell you my truth, and in a loving way, and say, bro, have you thought about this? Because I think a lot of us don't do that with one another. We're so afraid of losing someone that we're. I'll just speak for myself. In my life, I've been so afraid of losing people that I wasn't honest with them, and that's a lose-lose situation.
For sure.
Yeah, because you're not getting me, and I'm not getting all of you.
Right.
And then that leads me to my magician is that I was always 3 steps ahead of the game. I was never actually in time in this time because I was always had to be 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
But now my mind can think so fast is that I can be with you here. And I can check and see how I'm feeling about what you're saying, and I can still be open to you in what you're saying. And just be present now, and that feeds back to my lover, that I can hear you, and I can just on that axis I can hear you and understand you, and I just love that about me. And those 3 are in service now of my king, which is how do I look at the world and serve the world, as I'm almost 60, so it's like, as an older guy, in a loving way, how do I hold space for the world, and bless the world and challenge the world? It's like, it's not my world, it's the world, but how do I serve it as a leader in the world, and how does my leadership show up? And I love that about me. I love that I can, I've come of age. And all through all this stuff, who would have ever thought, and that I made it, and that now I can hold space and love on people, and wow, it's been a wild ride.
Well, I certainly recognize that about you just from the way that you hold space, which is really cool. And I was just blessed to have kind of connected with you as my sponsor, if you will, during my weekend. But just even great. As you facilitated, you and Chance and others there's just another level or way of being that I certainly aspire towards, but it just shows what's beautiful is that it shows other men how you can support and hold space for men and women and for the world,
absolutely,
without it coming from a place of ego, or trying to prove worthiness, and it can certainly be out of service, humility, but strength, and so many other things, of course, but I think it's really cool. So I so appreciate that about you too.
Thank you.
But it's cool to see, and that's what I think is so inspiring about your story is that you've been through. We haven't even begun to talk about your learning disabilities, if you will, and so many other things that you've been through, and then to be able to look kind of back at your life and be like, out of all of this came such a beautiful man, which has supported a wonderful wife and children and family and life purpose. Which is pretty cool.
It's really amazing. It's, I really feel now at this age, you mentioned my learning disabilities, which is, in that magician realm. I really believe from our greatest wounds comes our greatest gold, right? And so most of us spend, as a society, and certainly myself, we spend so much time trying to cover up what we think is broken in us, where that is where our greatest strengths lie. Correct. It's where our true humanity lives. And whether it's, whatever your drug of choice is for numbing out, TV, porn, sports, drugs, alcohol, you name it, spending money, right? I mean, whatever it is that you do to numb out, I get nervous, like when I start thinking about something and I'm in the car and I get close to a wound, I'll turn the channel really quick, just to do something. And that's what I call it, turning the channel. You turn the channels. I don't want to look at that.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at that.
Yeah.
But my profoundly wounded little boy is down there, and he's alone. And all I'm doing is covering him up.
Yeah.
And he's still alone. So the idea of being able to reach down, and grab that kid for me and hold him in my arms, and just, in all his broken, how he feels he's broken, and just love on him, and bless him, there's, and that, I've been a part of this, self-help work for a long time. What if that little boy, broken and all, is perfect just how he is? Because it's in his brokenness that he can lead and be, and love and inspire.
Right.
Right.
Going through one of my MKP trainings last night, PIT trainings, that we went through a process.
Yeah.
Where you get to look back and see when did broken trust begin.
Yeah.
In terms of bucketing and what that little boy created some ways of dealing with things he couldn't process at the time.
Yeah.
Did the best he could at the time.
Yep.
But what would that little boy need to hear? And it just was, I'm bringing it up because for anyone who's watching who may feel like they're resonating with your story, but still feel like, what are you talking, like, I'm addicted, or I'm a porn addict, or I'm a drug addict. I imagine you feel so lost and so broken that you'd look on you and be like, I'm never going to get there.
Right.
There's no, I would love to be there, but there's no way.
Yeah.
But then to realize that there are groups, there are processes,
yes,
men out there supporting each other.
Yes. Women out there supporting each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much help. And, I get feeling hopeless and helpless.
Yeah.
And the idea is there's that in some of you that are out there, right? And there's something true about you that's out there too. That there's something that's going to endure after you're gone. There's this spark inside of you that is there.
Yeah.
And touch that and start making small decisions from that space and finding somebody to listen to, to go to. Start with a therapist, but
right.
I'm a big believer in hanging out with, right? I'm a certified co-leader in the Mankind Project, and I'm a pharmacist, right? I believe in the genius in all of us, right? I'm no psychoanalyst, right? But I've certainly spent a lifetime up here.
For sure, for sure.
So yeah, we can man, we can really truly save one another. I truly believe that.
And I think it's the ego that comes in and likes to show up as making us think that we are apart from our source.
Right.
And whether you call it God or Mother Nature or energy, or whatever the case might be, I was just like, I'm listening to Eckhart Tolle, and he does such a great job of saying, like, the ego mind, is so focused up in here about how we look and are we going to disappoint people and all stuff, when in reality our consciousness, our way of being is always present in the moment.
Yes.
And we have to look and realize and have the emotional awareness to say, okay, that's just ego talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you start to see, and you can actually differentiate your identity away from the ego, you can start to let some of that stuff go versus just feeling you're broken and I must end this suffering.
Right.
Because this is the source. It's not.
Right. Exactly. Well, so I think I mentioned this to you before, but my belief is, and I'm sure I've heard this from someone else, but it is that when we're small and we're getting mowed over by life, the ego cuts a deal with the soul, because the soul can't handle that. The soul is pure love, and it's like, why is this happening to me? I'm going to freak out. Myself, this is not where I'm going to break.
Right.
And the ego steps in and says, hey, listen, dude, let me help you out, buddy. If you give control over to me, I'll keep you safe. And that's what happened to me. I'll keep you numb, right? I'll and my ego strategies were, drugs and alcohol, mostly drugs, killing yourself, beating stuff up. Those were my ego solutions to those things. And in that, it allowed my soul to make it until the time where my soul could finally go. And that's that part I talk about that's enduring about you and me, is that soul piece, until that soul can come up and say, hey, you know what? I want to take over the show again. You've been driving my bus, for a long time, but you're driving past my friends and my family, and you're driving past my all my dreams and my passion and my joy. You're driving past everything just to keep me safe, but I'm safe now, right? I'm now 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. I'm out of danger now. So the idea is to do this. I love a healthy ego, but man, that ego, when he drives my bus, I always see my ego up in my ego's an 8-year-old or a 3 to 8-year-old little boy, and he's driving the bus like this. And he's bouncing down this country road, and here's my family at one bus stop, and he's blowing past him, and there's dust blowing all over him, and that's my vision that works so well for me. It's like, oh, just like what you said. Oh, that's my ego talking. I just drove past my wife, and I gotta, and so what I do now is my soul says, hey, buddy, come on, you can't drive anymore. You can sit on my lap, but I have to drive, and then I can just pull over and open the door and let my wife in, So
let me ask you, because this is relevant in my life, and I'm sure it is in other people. When your wounded boy, or your pain body, or whatever you want to kind of put the name on, when that shows up and it lashes out, and hurts people that are the closest to you, whether in doing or saying things that you don't mean. It's like almost like you going to kill yourself. It wasn't premeditated. Sometimes it just comes out. And for me too, it's like sometimes, as my girlfriend explains, it's like diarrhea of the mouth. And I don't even think about it. It comes out, and then as I see her response, I'm like, oh God, what did I do?
What did I just say?
How do I or anyone watching kind of deal with situations like that, to make amends, and how to move forward, would you recommend, if there's any ideas? And then how, as the recipient of daggers, if you will, because you've been married a long time. I'm sure you've been through
one or two things.
Absolutely.
It's a regular marriage.
Right. So how do you work through those things into a partnership?
I'll preface it by saying the cool thing is, by getting older and learning, that stuff happens so much less, right? But the key thing is the learning part of it. So I can tell you, having a doe or a way, right? And for me, it's being in integrity. It's my mission statement, by speaking my truth and listening with faith, right? And the faith part in this instance isn't about religion. It's a faith that everything, that I'm going to be okay, and that everything's not, we're going to be okay here. Right. And so when I lash out, when I get triggered and I say something, I first and foremost immediately own it, as fast as I can. I can only tell you that I've probably apologized 100 times to my children. They're now 25 and 27, right? And I screw up like every parent screws up, right? And I own it, but I don't. But owning it, saying I'm sorry, really is like putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound.
Exactly what I thought. Exactly.
And
doesn't
so,
really help. It helps.
It helps some. I mean, the person gets that you're conscious. But for me, the next step is that I explain, I'm not coming from a fine place, right? I go ahead and become vulnerable in that time and say, listen, here's the data, here's what happened, and that triggered in me this feeling, and I was and usually what it is for me is fear. My anger actually comes from fear. It's or profound sadness comes out as anger, right? And so And so I'll own that with whoever I've just wounded and said, my wound just wounded you, and I want you to get why that came out for me. And I walk around with this thing, and it's not your fault.
Yeah.
What I just said, you were just being you.
Yeah.
I took you being you and internalized it and weaponized it, and that's not fair to you. And in that process, I'm learning, right? And that shadow belief about myself, which is I'm not good enough, or I'm profoundly broken and dirty, and I'll never be good enough, right? That core belief about myself got triggered, and I lashed out from that space. Well, I was just talking with some clients the other night, and I look at those as kind of like the vampires of life, like they suck the lifeblood out of relationships, right? And they're shadow vampires. And the idea about what you do with shadow and vampires is you shine light on them. And the light is understanding and open and a willingness to be vulnerable and learn. And you shine that light, and what happens to shadow and vampires when you shine light, right? They go away. And so and again, I don't want that shadow, that wound, to go away in me, because it's where my strength is, but I don't want to act out of that place.
Correct.
And so I honor that shadow place. And so I love that wounded little boy inside of me. I never want him to go away. And he was just driving my bus. I don't want that to happen. He's just like veered into the crowd. It's like, and so that's and it's learning, and for me it's been repetition of learning and vulnerability, and now I'm like, it's like I go, to react. I'm like, wait a second. That's my little boy. What's really happening with them? Right. Let's stay focused on them, because the next words were going to be all about me, right? And so what I do, my next step is like, if you find yourself going to be triggered, ask a question of the person and find out more. And for me, that disarms that shadow piece in me, because I'm learning more about you. I'm now focused on you instead of the wound that's in me. And so I ask a question and ask another question. And that seems to work really. That's been one of my strategies. So.
No, that's really, really good. Really, really good. Thank you. How would someone who's the recipient of your, or my verbal vomit, or that sort of thing, my pain Tourette's coming out of me, how do they, especially if it's because I feel like it shows up mostly with family and intimate relationships.
It's just like the insurance agencies will tell you that you're going to get in car wrecks the most within a mile of your house. And it's the same with the love wrecks, the heart wrecks. It's within about 20 feet of you. And it's kind of this. It's the same thing, but in a different way. It's like, if you see this coming at you, the idea is, for me, one of the things that I do is say, I just say, if I get triggered, right? Somebody says something hurtful to me, and I can either go ballistic, or I can, kind of try and stop that process. And it's like, so I tell myself, one, I'm safe. This is not about me. If I truly feel it isn't, And then I ask a question, or I make a statement. I say, so what you're telling me is that you think I'm unloving. And I get more information, because typically what I have found in personal relationships that are, for the most part functional, is that I'll just speak about Stacy and myself. It's not Stacy's intent to harm me. She's speaking a truth, and she may be speaking from her triggered space. Her little girl may be driving her bus. And so we can, the more I ask questions about that, the more light I shine on that. As opposed to going, little girl against little boy and duking it out, which never ends well.
Yeah.
It's like little girl, loving man.
Yeah.
So tell me more.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. And again, just comes from repetition. But if you think the best about the person that you're in relationship, if you think the best, if I think the best about Stacy or about my children or about my good buddies, their intent isn't to wound me.
Correct.
And so, so we can, and there's some other things that you can do. I was doing a consult with a couple the other night, and one of the things that, if your partner is going to get triggered, I can say, honey, I'm going to say some stuff, but I want you to know that I love you and I really respect you.
Yeah.
And this isn't meant to harm you, but I feel I need to say that.
Yeah.
Now, if you start out every one of those conversations that way,
yeah.
it diffuses the situation pretty well. Now, whoever the recipient is may get hurt somewhat, but if you have an agreement between the two of you that you're going to think the best of each other and love on each other, and that in a loving relationship, honesty is absolutely essential, and I have to stand up for me, and I certainly expect you to stand up for you.
Yeah.
And so we may disagree at times, but we can do that as safely as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Communication creates that, that safe space.
Right.
And that container, if you will. That keeps everyone hopefully engaged in the greater purpose, which is growth and holding each other to our truths and being able to speak that.
And if I'm profoundly triggered, if I'm really, really angry, I tend to ask for space, and I just say, I'm really angry right now. This would probably not be the best time for me to have a conversation. And I go off and I get introspective, and I think about the person, our relationship, myself, what's happening, and then I come back and can have a conversation. And that doesn't always work, right?
No,
sometimes I just go bleh, right?
Yeah. Same.
Same.
And sometimes it's just being triggered and I don't even see it coming, and that's just
But this, I really believe that, and I've seen it in friendships, and I've seen it in employees, and in people that I've done consultations with and things like that. This is a learned skill. You can become better at this. It can get better pretty fast if both parties agree to a certain set of ground rules. Things can change really quite quickly. When you're focused on mutual respect and love, things change pretty quickly. It doesn't. It can take like a martial art. It can take years or decades to become a master at it. But you can really stop profoundly wounding one another, within a couple weeks. So
that's I think
inspiring
and hopeful for anyone who's doing it, myself included, right?
Right.
I think in wrapping things up, I'd love to kind of just hear, what do you feel like is men's greatest needs in today's society?
I really believe to feel of true service in some way. We all got to work, and some of us are lucky enough, again, I developed this mission statement when I was 29 years old, so I was a young guy. So I was actually able to wrap my mission statement into my entire career. And I loved couldn't wait to get to work. Was not a workaholic, didn't define me, but when I was there, I loved doing what I was doing. So having a core belief about how you're going to be in the world and be of service in the world, you can do that being a salesman, a mechanic, a cook. It doesn't matter, and you can bring honor to how you are. And life doesn't. What I typically see for a lot of guys is their work is so draining because they may be doing something that they don't love, that when they get home, what they do is they tend to numb out. And a certain amount of that is absolutely necessary. Life can be overwhelming. As long, as far as I'm concerned, as long as it's pretty healthy. I mean, even having a drink, every, a few nights a week, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. But to sit in front of the TV or in front of a gaming station for the next 8 hours, that's your life.
Right.
People are, honest to God, people are watching people on TV open up storage units and go through people's unwanted junk. Millions of people watch that I'm like, I can't even believe that I would waste this short, precious time I got, that I can be of service as something greater than myself. And I don't care who you serve, it doesn't matter. But I said before, I believe that there's a genius in every single one of us. And I think there's a profound purpose in every single one of us. I am not going to be Martin Luther King, right? I'm not going to be Mahatma Gandhi, right? But I'm going to leave a mark on this world of service.
Right.
And I'm, if I die tomorrow, I die a happy man. I die fulfilled. I don't leave any rock unturned any day, right? It's not that I don't unplug and watch TV, and I do, right? I do all that stuff. And I also spend the most of my day in service of other folks. So for most men, and this is the thing that I don't think is passed down generationally, is that most men aren't taught to follow their passion. And again, you can do that in any job.
Right.
Because it's not the job that defines you, it's you that defines the job.
Right.
And so if you bring your passion and your caring and your loving heart and and you're wanting to make the world a little bit better than you found it into your job, one, your job goes a lot better. Two, you probably get promoted. And three, you walk home energized as opposed to drained. And so then you can go home and love on your partner, and if you have kids, you love on kids, and then you can go to a PTA meeting or whatever it is. But life, I think you get a sense about me is
Absolutely.
like I'm rarely tired. I'm tired when my head hits the pillow. The rest of the day, I'm having a blast. And that's my want and wish for men in this world, because I think the opposite side of that is that we're tired. We come out of our egos. We overpower, target groups. And we make a mess of it. As opposed to being in service of it.
I think coming around full circle from what you said at the very beginning, when you're coming out of abuse and you're just attempting to survive, if of that, the wake that's being cast off by this, or the dust being left by this little boy driving the bus, is so different than the wake that you're leaving of love. And I think it's again that what I'm hoping to do with these interviews and talking to amazing individuals like yourself is like casting some light on not it just being theoretically based and that's pie in the sky and that sounds great and he seems awesome, but I don't connect with that because I don't know the steps from how to go from A to Z. I'm just trying to get from A to B, and that seems overwhelming. It's like, how do I get there to where I leave a lasting legacy of love? Which yourself and Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, and Mother Teresa, and all these individuals that have left a long legacy is always based on love.
It is. And if you look at any major religion, it's all based on love. It's it's the one unifying thought for all of us. And you're exactly right. And that's my hope for us. And if you don't know what to do next, just do. This is my wife and I's statement. This is how we've ran our businesses, how our relationship has been, how we've been as parents. Just do the next right thing. Just do the next right step. It doesn't, the end result. My master was very clear. It's not where you end up. It's every step of the way. It's the journey that makes it the joy.
Right.
So just do the next right thing for yourself.
Right.
If you're stuck in addiction, do the next right thing. If you feel like you're numbing out, do the next right thing. Take a small step and don't numb out one night a week. Just one step at a time.
Yeah.
And that's how you grow, to having a fulfilled, to be able to say, if I die tomorrow, I die fulfilled.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hope you guys really enjoyed this. If you want to get in touch with Jeff, maybe we'll put some contact info. Or,
Yeah, sure. That's
something
fine.
Like that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Just in terms of, being able to ask any questions, or feel free to comment below, whether you're seeing this on YouTube or Facebook. You can always reach out to me and that sort of thing in terms of support. Just know that you're not alone. There have been, many other individuals that have maybe come before you or that are here to support you. So thank you again.
My pleasure. My honor.
Take care.